So now we've been talking about sexuality and how we can prevent sexualization and violence, and talk to children and young people about the body, feelings, identity, and sexual and reproductive health and rights. So how do we take everything we talked about with us out onto the football field? How can we create safe spaces in our football teams where everyone feels welcome and safe, regardless of their body, their feelings, their identity, and how they choose to live their life? How can we strengthen and support young people in their sexuality? When we work with children and young people, we will inevitably follow their development, and there will be periods when more questions arise, such as when they enter puberty. So how can we ensure that our football team becomes a forum where these questions can be asked? From the first training, Values-Based Leadership, we have gone through various tools that you can use to create a safe space by checking in and checking out, creating a safe culture, making sure all players are seen and listened to, addressing players by their name and thereby strengthening their identity and their self-esteem. All these tools are really important to use consistently to create a safe space and strengthen your players' self-esteem, in order for the football team to continue being a safe space when entering puberty, where you make room for all possible questions, thoughts, and experiences that your players might bring with them to the field. But you might wonder, why should we really talk about these things with our players? We're football coaches, and sex has nothing to do with football. Well, first of all, remember that sexuality is about so much more than sex. It's about your feelings, your body, your health and well-being, your self-esteem, your identity, your relationships, and your future. And all these things have everything to do with football. To play football, you need to understand yourself, your feelings, and your body. You need good health and well-being. You need self-esteem and confidence. To play in a team, you need to feel secure in your identity, and you need to be able to make and keep good relationships. And if you want your team to develop and stay with you, you also need to address the choices that your players make that affect their future. For example, if they have unprotected sex or not, if they bully someone in the team because they might be different in some way to the others, or if they support each other on the team, and so on. Naturally, topics such as how your body changes during puberty, or how menstruation works and might affect your training, will come up at some point in your football team. So why not prepare for this by talking about it already from the beginning instead of when it might be too late? Many people say that we shouldn't talk to young people about sex because we might encourage them to become sexually active. There is no evidence that suggests that this would be the case. On the contrary, we know that as biological human beings, at some point, we will start to explore our own body and sexuality. Usually, this happens during puberty. This is completely normal and happens as a natural part of our development. So why not talk to young people about sexuality and sexual relationships so that once they do start to explore, they can do so in a way that feels good for them and their partners? So if you had a player that wanted to borrow your car to drive, would you just give them the car? Of course not. You wouldn't give the car to anyone if this person did not have a driver's license, know the traffic rules, and so on. Probably you wouldn't give your car to anyone if you didn't know that they were good and careful drivers. And why not? Because it's dangerous. Well, isn't it the same with sex? If we just let young people with no experience, no knowledge or information, no understanding of themselves or others, explore their sexuality, it's quite likely that they will end up in situations that they might not want to be in, that could be harmful. They could also more easily be subject to abuse. So not talking about sex is dangerous. But if we do talk with young people before they enter puberty about sexuality, as we've talked about in previous modules, understanding their body, their feelings, their identity, their sexual and reproductive rights, and how they can have a good sexual and reproductive health, understanding what violence and abuse is and how violence can be prevented, and knowing that there is support if they need it, then young people will explore their sexuality in a mindful way, being careful of themselves and others. And to a greater extent, they will be able to have sexual experiences that are positive. So think about this as giving them a manual for how they can better understand themselves and others and feel good in their sexuality and in their relationships, once that becomes relevant in their lives. For some, it might come early, for some, it might come later, but we know for sure that it will come. So let's prepare our players instead of keeping them in the dark without information, understanding, and self-esteem.